So Soothe 3 just came out. I'm gonna give you my honest review of it because I think it's a really great match for a specific group of people, but for everybody else, I have some controversial thoughts. So first I'll go over what's new compared to the old version, and then I'll run some tests with it against FabFilter Pro Q4's Spectral EQ, and then I'll give you my honest assessment based on the price and everything else at the end. So first, when it comes to the UI design of this plugin, I give it a 10 out of 10. I mean, props to the developers for this UI design. It's modern, it's sleek, it's everything I would want a modern plugin to look like. Now, Soothe 3 is the highest end dedicated Spectral EQ plugin on the market. I say dedicated Spectral EQ plugin because FabFilter Pro Q4 has Spectral EQ built into it, but it also has tons of other features like dynamic EQ and regular EQ and all of that. But Spectral EQs are great for removing mud from things or balancing vocals.
Say I'm underwater, I'll stop breathing.
So compressors are good when the volume of your track is moving all over the place and you want a more even signal. And spectral EQs are good when the volume of specific frequencies is moving all over the place and you want them to be more even. So there are two different modes on Soothe 3. There's soft mode and hard mode. Soft mode has an adaptive threshold, so it actually doesn't matter how loud the incoming signal is. It's more about the relative loudness within that signal. It's like using the auto threshold on a compressor. So the compressor actually adapts the threshold to the level of your track. And then hard mode reacts to the absolute levels of your frequencies. So something new in Soothe 3 that I like is this detail knob. If you look at Soothe 2, they used to have two knobs here, the sharpness and selectivity knobs. And I always felt like these two knobs were not intuitive to use at all. So now they've combined both of those into one knob. And now you have the side panel that can be collapsed, and there are some new features in here like tilt. So based on what you set as the global detail level, I could make just the low end have less detail, so it doesn't react as strongly, or I could make it have more detail than the high end. Or you can control the high end and have the high end have more detail in it. So it allows you to shape your sound a little better, just so it's not the same detail level across the whole frequency spectrum. And you can do the same thing with the attack and release. Like let's say I have a vocal track.
Say I'm underwater, I'll stop
I probably want the attack to be faster in the high end, so it reacts more quickly to that sibilance. And I could probably make it a little slower in the low end. And you can do the same thing with the release. I could have a faster release in the high end and a slower release in the low end. So you set your global levels over here, and then you can tweak them throughout the frequency spectrum with the tilt section. And another new feature that is definitely helpful is this max cut feature that they didn't have before. So let's say you only wanted a maximum of 3 decibels of reduction on any given frequency. You can easily set that. Now, if we look at FabFilter Pro Q4, that's already built in by default. This dynamic range knob is the range and is the max reduction by default, so that's already built in. So it's good they added that in Soothe 3 as well, because that was definitely missing from Soothe 2. Now, this is a really small thing, but in the settings menu, you can click Show Frequency near cursor, and then wherever your mouse pointer is, it shows you where you are on the frequency spectrum, which can be helpful when you're dialing in your reductions throughout the curve. Now, really the feature that I think sets this spectral EQ apart from all other spectral EQs is this tiny setting down here, low latency mode. So you'll notice down here, there's minimum phase mode, which adds a little less latency, and linear phase mode, which is how FabFilter Pro Q4 works with its spectral EQ, and that adds a good amount of latency. So you'll notice if you have it in linear phase mode, that gets turned off when you put it in low latency mode. So this would literally allow you to use this plugin in a live performance. Like you could run a guitar through this while you're playing on stage and it would work with barely any latency, like 1 millisecond of latency. That's something that most other spectral EQs, including fab filters, just straight up can't do. So now I have some audio tests set up so we can directly compare Soothe 3 to fab filter spectral EQ. First, let's compare how some low mud cleanup sounds. They honestly sound really comparable to me. They both sound pretty professional when it comes to cleaning up the low mids. So I also wanted to do a high-end reduction test to see if I could hear any sound quality differences. It's a small difference, but I honestly think Soothe 3 sounds a little more smooth on the high end. And then another important test we can do is to clean up a vocal. So I'm cleaning up the low mids of the vocal, and I'm also reducing the sibilance in the high end.
Say I'm underwater, I'll stop breathing. Say I'm underwater, I'll stop breathing. Tell me black is white, and I'll see it. Tell me black is white, and I'll see it.
So there's actually a huge difference here that I want to show you in more detail. So if I were to cut a lot of sibilance from the vocal just in the high end,
Say I'm underwater,
just notice how Soothe 3 is like constantly reducing the frequencies in the high end here. Now if we look at Pro Q4, notice how it's not just constantly reducing all the high end. It's only reacting to some really harsh sibilance that comes up occasionally. Whereas Soothe 3, it's just constantly reducing those high frequencies. Now I put these on extreme settings, like 12 decibels of reduction so you could hear it better. But when I'm mixing a vocal, I only want a spectral EQ to come down on the very harshest sibilance that pops up. I don't want it smoothing out everything in the high end of my vocal. So this is a big advantage that Pro Q4 has over Soothe 3, I think, for vocal mixing. Now, something important to talk about is obviously the price. When you see $259 as the price for this plugin, it's honestly kind of shocking. Like, I know OK Sound is positioning themselves as a premium plugin manufacturer, but my entire DAW, Logic Pro, is $199. I've used this for over 15, almost 20 years, and I'm still learning new things I can do in this every day. The amount of features and plugins it comes with and things you can do with it are actually mind-blowing. And you're telling me that Logic Pro costs less than this one plugin? And that's not even accounting for the fact that FabFilter Pro Q4 is $199, which seems expensive, but it's literally a normal EQ, a dynamic EQ, a spectral EQ, a spectral expander. You can make so many different bands with this in all sorts of different shapes. It has these advanced mixing capabilities where you can see all the other instances in your DAW to help you mix better. And that's not to mention in our sound quality tests, they're pretty similar on sound quality. I think they both sound really good. So I would say the main reason to pay this much for this plugin would be the low latency mode. If you're doing anything live and you need a spectral EQ to balance something live, then there's no replacement for this plugin. It's gonna be the best for that. But for every other use case, it's hard to justify the price. I mean, if you do own Soothe 2, the upgrade price is $55, which I do think is fair. But if you don't own any Soothe plugins yet, then you pay the full sticker price of $259, which I think is kind of crazy. I hate to say that because the developers that made this plugin are obviously so good at what they do. The UI is great, the sound quality is great. It's an amazing plugin overall, but it's just hard to justify that price. Anyway, I hope you guys like this review. If you're interested in making punchy, powerful masters, I do have a completely free mastering course available at bigzcourses.com/mastering. Other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.